and welcome to episode 26 of The Smallest Thing. I'm Lisa Manterfield. Last week, I finished a first reader draft of my work in progress, a historical novel set in World War II England. A first reader draft is more like a third draft, but it's a draft that feels like a book and is sufficiently pulled together that someone could read the whole thing and give me feedback. Although I started working on the book last year, most of the heavy lifting of really shaping the story was done this year during lockdown. At first, I thought my days under lockdown wouldn't be much different from my normal work days, which are largely spent alone in my office. There were other factors that came into play, though. I'll tell you more about that later. But first, let's catch up with Em in the aftermath of her visit to see Deb, in this week's episode of The Smallest Thing. Welcome to the serialized audiobook, The Smallest Thing, written by Lisa Manterfield, read for you by Charlie Sanderson.
Chapter 26, Tuesday, August the 16th. By morning, it's clear to me that Dad isn't just tired. He's still not up by the time I finish breakfast, and when I poke my head around his bedroom door, he yells at me not to come in. In the glimpse I catch of his face, I can see he's pale and sweating. I can't leave him, so I grab my mask and gloves and venture in with a glass of water and a damp cloth. Close up, I can see he looks terrible, and when I put the cloth to his forehead, he flinches as if he's been burned. I dab at his face as gently as I can until he relaxes into the bed. "Dad?" He opens his eyes. "Don't touch me," he says. "Stay away." "I'm protected, Dad. It's okay. Do you want me to get the medic?" He only moves his head a hair, but I can tell he's saying no. I know I should ignore him. I know that at the first sign of any symptoms he should go to Bubble City, but if he has the virus, he'll be moved to the care ward. I can't let him go there. I can't let them take my dad to that place, so he can lie there alone, like Deb. "I can look after you here," I say. "No," he says. "I have to go in. Just let me rest a bit first." He closes his eyes. A moment later, he is asleep again. Downstairs, I rummage through the supply box until I find more soup. In identical plain sachets, I find broccoli and Stilton or minestrone. I opt for the latter, as it sounds more like something you'd give a sick person. I fill the kettle and wait for the water to boil so I can turn the small pile of brown dust in the bottom of the bowl into nourishing soup for my dad. He can't get sick. That can't happen to us. Dad's job in the village is to make sure everyone else is okay, and he can't do that if he's ill. I have to do everything I can to boost his immunity, to get him through this tiredness and back on his feet again. But even as I try to convince myself he'll be okay, the terrible reality wriggles into my brain like a serpent. I try to keep it back, but it finds the smallest gap in my defences and worms its way in. My dad has the virus. I know it. I catch my breath and shake the thought from my head. I can't give up on him. For once in my life, I need to be the best daughter I can be. I suit up, and when the soup's ready, I carry it upstairs along with a hot Lemsip. I know a cold powder won't stop this virus, but it might make Dad feel better. I perch on the bed and, when he opens his eyes, I smile. "Soup's up," I say. "I'm not hungry." "I know, but have a bit anyway. It'll make you feel better." His brow furrows like he's about to assert his authority on the matter of the soup, but then it softens. The corners of his mouth turn up for an instant, not exactly a smile, but an acknowledgement of sorts. I help him sit up and prop the pillows behind him to make him comfortable. "Don't fuss," he says. "I'm fine." "I will fuss if I choose, and you're not really in any shape to stop me." The smile flutters again, and he takes the spoon from me. He takes a sip and lets it trickle down his throat. "It's nice," he says. "Well, I know it's not, but I appreciate the sentiment. Maybe I can raid the cellar and make some real minestrone." He sips some more, then hands me the spoon. A minute later, he slides down in the bed and closes his eyes. "Don't tell your mother," he whispers. "Not yet." Personally, burdening Mum with this news is exactly what I want to do. But Dad and I are a team now, and I feel strongly about respecting his wishes. I promise him I'll tell her everything's okay until it's time to tell her how not okay we are. "Get some rest," I say. "I'll check on you later." That night, I get a text message from Mrs. Ashton. It's all proper and grammatically correct. It probably took her ages to type. "Dear Emmett," it reads, "I have been trying to reach your dad, but he hasn't responded. Is everything all right? Yours, Andrea Ashton." My heart sinks. The problem with being a rock for the village is that when the rock becomes submerged, people notice. It's only a matter of time before people realise Dad is not out and about and piece together that something is wrong. I'm not ready to let him go. I might never be ready to let him go. So I have to keep him hidden as long as I can. "He's fine," I type back. "Phone problems. Can I give him a message?" Ages later, a response comes back. "Dear Emmett, please thank your dad for the veg. The smallest thing can give us hope in the goodness of mankind and for the possibility of the future. He is a good man, and you are very much like him. Andrea." I sink onto the bed and read it again until Mrs. Ashton's words start to stir something inside me. It seems ridiculous that a simple bag of carrots could prompt such a response in her. But after a while, I start to realise it has little to do with the carrots themselves, although I'm sure they'll be enjoyed and appreciated. It's about the gesture. Dad's been right all along. It's about showing people that someone cares about what happens to them, that they're not going through this tunnel of hell completely alone, that the smallest things can make a difference. All this time, I've fought against my dad, never understanding the thing that comes naturally to him, the thing that he's always understood, and I haven't. But I keep getting stuck on the same fear. Being a saint might have kept my dad alive in his spirit, but I'm terrified that it could ultimately kill him. I'm afraid it might also kill me. I am not speaking in metaphors. The possibility of death has been all around me, but suddenly it's taken a few steps closer, and I am afraid. Mrs. Ashton is wrong about me being like my dad. I'm not like him at all. My dad is a much better person, and that gives me a little comfort in any way. The next morning, I wake to the sound of someone calling my name. "Dad!" I gasp, climbing out of bed. I fling open the door and flick on the light. There's a dark patch of moisture on Dad's pillow, and his hair has shrunk into tight, sodden curls. As I move toward him, he groans and thrashes his head from side to side. "Liz," he murmurs. "Liz." After all that's happened, he's still calling for Mum. I feel a pang of guilt that I haven't told her yet that he's ill. "It's me, Emmett," I say. "It's okay, I'm here." He says. "I'm here, Dad." His breathing is laboured, and when he opens his eyes they roll away from me. "Go," he says. "Please, go." "Go where, Dad? For the medic?" His head lolls to one side. "I'll go," I tell him. "I'll be back." "No!" He grabs for my arm, but I'm out of reach. "Dad." "Emmett," he says. His eyes range around my face until some inner force pulls them to mine. The ferocity of his gaze causes me to pull back. "You have to go." "Go where, Dad? Where do you want me to go?" "Away," he says. "London." I don't understand what he's telling me at first, until I realise he doesn't mean leave his room, he means leave the village. "I can't, Dad." "After," he says, his voice growing weaker. "After this, go. Live." He forces a weak smile that rips out my heart and leaves a gaping ache where it used to be. Proud of you, he whispers. I will, Dad, I say. I promise, but not yet. I'm not leaving you alone. I can't leave you alone, he says. In that instant, I see a flash of the future. Without Dad, I will be alone here, in the one place I vowed I would not die. If I fall ill here, who will take care of me? I think about Deb and know what would happen to me. All these years Dad has worked to build our community, pulling everyone together for the good of the whole, and now it's every man for himself, and he knows it. Now the only person who will be there for me is me. Dad drifts away again. I'm not sure if he even knows what he's just said to me, but I'm not going to run. I have to stay here and take care of him as best I can, for as long as I can. That night, I'm suited up again when the outside gate squeaks. For a brief instant, I hope it's Aiden before I remember how very, very bad that would be. He may have massaged a few rules for Dad and me, but I'm certain he wouldn't break this one. If he knows Dad is infected, he'll have to turn him in. I creep to the window and pull back the curtain just enough to peek out. I wait for the doorbell to ring, but then the gate squeaks again. I peer down in the dim light to see who it is. It's not Aiden, it's Mrs. Glover. Mrs. Glover with the reputation for getting her nose into everyone's business. Bugger. The last place I need her nose is in our business. When I'm sure she's long gone, I creep down and open the front door to see if she's left a note or something. Even though she's known my family for years, it's no guarantee that she won't turn us in if she thinks we're a threat. It's not a fault of Mrs. Glover. It's the way things are now. There is a note taped to the top of a paper bag. I pull both inside and close the door. Inside the bag is a bottle of cod liver oil and a small bag of what appears to be dried flowers. "This is my great-grandmother's cure-all tea," the note reads. "It's worked for me so far and I hope it works for you. Give your dad my best wishes and let me know if there's anything I can do." In the silence of the house, all I can hear is my own breathing moving slowly in and out. But what I feel is the slightest invisible sensation of knowing that someone else knows about my dad, and that someone else cares. I'm not alone. And knowing that helps me do what's necessary to keep my dad and myself alive. When Dad shows no sign of improvement, I doubt my decision to keep him at home. In my brief daily calls and texts to Mum, I keep telling her we're okay, filling her in on other news from around the village instead. I rationalise that she's too far away to do anything and that telling her will only make her worry. But if Dad doesn't get better soon, I'll have to tell her the truth. I don't relish that conversation, and so I cling to the hope that Dad will pull through. Half a dozen times a day, I go through the procedure of donning my protective suit and taking care of him. When my supply of suits runs out, I develop a new protocol to wash them off in bleach solution and hang them up to dry on the shower rail. I know it's a risky venture, but when it comes to saner options, I have none. Once I'm dressed, I rummage through the medicine cabinet, looking for anything that might help. I find vitamins and cough syrup, plus a half-used container of antibiotics. I gather them together and take them to Dad. He looks afraid when I open the door. "It's okay, Dad," I tell him. "It's just me." He forces a smile. I put my double-gloved hand on his forehead and brush his hair aside the way Mum used to when I was little. I know it won't feel the same to him with all the protective layers I have, but any touch has got to be better than total isolation. I prop him up and feed him more soup, then lay out the medicines for him to choose. I'm not sure he's alert enough to make this decision, but I'm too afraid to make it alone. When he points to them all, I know this is all a mistake. The one thing I know I must do is the very last thing I want to do. "We should take you in," I say. He shakes his head. Not leaving you, he mumbles. You need to get proper medicine, Dad. His face softens into a gentle smile. No point, just need you. I need you too, Dad, I tell him. And it feels like the most truth I've ever shared with him. In this giant mess of a village, we are all we have, and we just need to hold on as long as we can. I give him the vitamins and an antibiotic and stay with him until he goes to sleep. I towel his face, and when he looks somewhat comfortable, I leave him alone and go to start the process of removing and decontaminating the suit. I hang it in the bathroom to dry and go downstairs to kill some time until I have to do it all again. I drop the soiled cloths into the sink and run the water as hot as I can. I wash my hands, still in their rubber gloves, and scrub them with antibacterial soap, all the time watching the clock to make sure I wash for the prescribed time. The rhythm of my scrubbing causes my thoughts to churn. I should let Mum know about Dad, but she's got enough on her plate taking care of Alice, plus she might wig out and call the authorities to get help for Dad, but maybe that would be a good thing. I rub my hands harder, trying to scrub away my complicated responsibilities, but it doesn't work. When I'm done, I boil water in the kettle and go through my new clean-up list, checking off every step to make sure I don't contaminate anything. But as I go through the monotony of cleaning, scrubbing, boiling and bleaching, all I can think about is how much worse Dad seems today, and how the right thing to do is to tell Mum. And gnawing away under that is the knowledge that I shouldn't be trying to care for him alone, no matter what he wants, and no matter what I promised. I'm just finishing the last step of the process when the doorbell rings. I slip my gloves off into the water and give my hands their final wash. I haven't been washing for the full 30 seconds when it rings again. Whoever is at the door seems determined to get my attention. When my hands are clean, I dry them off, throwing the towel into the contaminated pile and scurry to the door. Through the frosted panel, I can see the yellow mass of a suit. They found us out. I curse under my breath and back away from the door. But there's no point in hiding. They know we're in here. All I can do is fake it and hope for the best. I shake my whole body, willing it to relax and look natural. I crack open the door. Aiden is standing there. Oh, I say, feeling my face flush with the memory of our last encounter and then burn with the shame of all the things I've done wrong since. You okay? He asks. Of course, I say, trying to sound casual. Why wouldn't I be? I was wondering why you took so long to answer. I was getting worried. Bathroom, I say, and force a quick smile. Sorry. Aiden's eyes narrow, and I'm sure he doesn't believe me. But I hold my smile, hoping he won't ask about my dad because I don't want to have to lie. It feels like a week before his eyes soften, and he gets that sheepish look I've come to love. I need to talk to you about something, he says. Can I come in for a minute? Aiden glances over my shoulder and I catch myself leaning forward to block his view. Not that Dad is likely to get out of bed today, but if he calls for my help and Aiden hears, we're done. When I hesitate, he adds, Please, it's important. For a horrible moment, I wonder if he's come to tell me he's been reassigned. Are you leaving? What? You've been reassigned? What? No. I can't believe how relieved I am. If he went, I don't know what I'd do. He's the only good thing left in this village, and if he left, it would be the last desolate straw. But when I look up at Aiden, he has a look on his face that says whatever he needs to tell me can't wait. Emmy, he says, and the name startles me. He's never called me that before. No one has, no one except Dad. And suddenly, I know why he's here. I search his eyes, and I find what he's come to tell me. It's about Deb.
Welcome back. My new novel in progress is now sitting in the hands of a small group of trusted first readers. Over the coming weeks, they'll give me feedback on the book and help me identify which areas need my attention on the next round of revisions. They'll look at the plot, character development, pacing and voice. They'll help me spot subplots that need fleshing out and story threads that don't serve the book as a whole. They'll tell me where the story is weak, as well as where its strengths lie. This kind of feedback is invaluable because I'm too close to the story to see what is and isn't working now. Plus, the story is complete in my head, but that doesn't mean to say it's all clear on the page. With everyone's feedback in hand, I'll be ready to dive back in and take the story to what I hope will be close to a finished draft. Although the reality is that the book isn't really finished until the last proofreading changes are made, and I've a long way to go before then. Writing during lockdown has been a mixed experience and different from my usual process in some unexpected ways. In the beginning, my writers group set up online write-ins via Zoom, and by writing on a schedule, I made a lot of progress on that early draft. Later, as the lockdown dragged on and the daily news became progressively more grim, I used my writing as a means of escape. Better to live in a fictional world at war than in our real world. But after a while, the lockdown started to take its toll, as it has for many of you, and my ability to stay focused wavered. I took breaks from the writing and dabbled around with several other projects, probably as a way to put off doing the mentally intensive work of revising. Finally, I set myself a deadline and pushed on to finish a draft I could send to readers. I got the work done and I got the story out, but now it's out of my hands, I worry that it's perhaps not my best work. Some days I felt like I was going through the motions of putting words onto the page, and I found it hard to dive into some of the deep emotional work that's needed to bring a book to life. Feeling this way is part of the creative process, and in normal times I have tricks to jolt myself. Often that means getting out of my office and writing somewhere else, such as outdoors, in my garden, at the library or at a coffee house. In the past, I've even holed up in a hotel room, either alone or with an author friend, and had a dedicated weekend of writing, enabling me to really dive deep into the story and tap the levels that really make a story come to life. Between COVID restrictions and poor air quality from the wildfires, I wasn't able to do any of those things with this book. But my trusted readers will tell me if I've missed the mark, and I'm already gearing myself up for some big revisions when their notes come back. Until then, I'm dabbling around with a new book idea and looking for new ways to shake up my writing time and get out of my office. I'll look forward to telling you more about both of these projects soon. Until next week then, be well. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Smallest Thing. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. If you'd like to support the show, please leave a review and share this series with others you think might enjoy it. If you're on Instagram, tag me there at LisaManterfield_, or follow me on Facebook at author Lisa Manterfield and Twitter at Lisa Manterfield. My newsletter subscribers are always the first to know about my news, events, upcoming releases, giveaways, and more. Sign up for monthly delivery at lisamanterfield.com/subscribe and get your complimentary copy of Love, Loss and Letting Go, 3 of my short stories. Thanks to Justin Joseph for producing and editing this show, and to Ketsa.uk for the music. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening.